Assalamu alaikum, this is Ali Farooq again. We are here with another episode with Dr. Khalid Zaheer. He is visiting us in Dallas, and we wanted to use this opportunity, as I said before, to have some sessions with him at Fireside Chat. So today we'll focus a bit more on Ghamidi Saab and focus on his personality and how Khalid Zaheer Saab takes Ghamidi Saab in his perspective. In the previous episode, we covered how the journey of Khalid Saab as a student. So Khalid Saab, right, just to get on the topic, let's just take these 15 minutes to understand your perspective on from different tangents about the Ustad Javed Ahmed Ghamidi. You're a student, and we want to share with the world how a student has seen him across those tangents, from very close, right? And I know in the previous episode you talked about how he changed from 1990 to 1994. So I would love to talk about that and things that you saw that change. But let's just start with the first thing that you think is the most prominent you want to talk about, Ustad.
I think, if you imagine what I was and the kind of young people that were like me who got close to Ghamidi Saab, we had only one passion. We wanted to know God's message, God's religion the way it is. Yeah. Obviously, it was a very vague title, but nonetheless, it was pretty much clear that we wanted to make sure that we are given an understanding of Islam which we can confidently imagine, feel that it's Islam. And for that purpose, we used to ask him questions, and everybody knows that Ghamidi Saab is one person who is extremely welcoming when it comes to the question of asking questions. So, in the 80s, we did find him evolving, intellectually. But I think when I left him in the 90s, early 90s, he had reached a stage in his own investigation and research where his ideas were getting more clear and his conclusions were becoming more confident. His arguments had reached the stage where he could actually stand confidently before the society and say that this is what Islam stands for. So probably in my journey of association with him, I left him, one might say, at the wrong time. When I came back, to give you an example, when I left him, I had this notion, as I'd understood from him, that one of the worst things that has happened to the economies of the world in general and the Muslim economies in particular were the institutions of insurance and banking. And that's exactly what I had written my thesis on, It was a critique on Islamic banking. When I came back, I learned from Ghamidi Saab that insurance is brilliant. There's nothing wrong with it except for the fact that you should take away the element of riba interest from it. And I also started feeling that he had not many problems with banking as well, except for the fact that obviously that riba part of it should be eliminated, and he had his own ideas as to how to get rid of riba from banking. Likewise, before I left for the UK, can you imagine, we as a group, our ustad and we students, would never ever participate in a gathering of, let's say, weddings where there was mixed gathering. We would never do it. When I came back in 94, I felt that it was absolutely fine. And everybody belonging to Al-Mawrid was going there. So, I was in a bit of a shock for the first 2 or 3 years of my return. But then obviously, it was a process that I had to go through. You would find in the case of many of the students who were very close to Ghamidi Saab, that they would not accept his views without questioning, without actually properly scrutinizing them.
And
challenging them. And I was, for one, emotionally involved, attached to the points of view that we had concluded were Islam. And I had fought with my family, I had fought with the society by not participating in mixed gatherings. And here comes a view which says that there's nothing wrong with it. So, it was a transformation for me which was not acceptable for quite a while.
So did you challenge him back?
Oh, yes, I did. I did it. I remember I delivered a kind of a speech And Ghamidi Sahib was there, and I was very emotional, and I said that what's happening, it's not acceptable. But then at some stage, not long afterwards, that I realized that after all, Ghamidi Sahib is right.
Did you think, I want to come back to this topic, is important, but did you think that you evolved as well to understand how he applied to understand Islam and the knowledge, and that's where the evolution was taking place, methodology was the same, and you also didn't understand the full methodology to apply in learning Islam?
Absolutely. I mean, the great thing, virtue of being in company with Ghamidi Sahib is that he takes you along. He doesn't push you into what he thinks is right to believe. He would just invite you, ask for your attention to look at the arguments that he's presenting. He would never force any one of us to believe in what he thinks is right. But yeah, he would be upset if any of his students has not bothered to understand what he's saying. He would never force anyone to accept and be a part of the understanding that he believes is right. But he would be upset when he would know that somebody is very close to him and has been associated with him for the last so many years and has not bothered to properly understand his point of view. Having understood his view and disagreed with it, he would have no problems.
There are a lot of students under Ghamidi Sahib who probably don't agree with everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so this topic about mixed gathering, because we're focusing on Ghamidi Sahib, and I want to talk about it in a way that we understand him and his personality. It's still very controversial. So people listening right now probably would say that Ghamidi Sahib is just a modern, very secular type of a scholar, who's just trying to open things up for people who are very liberal-minded, right? Because mixed gathering, traditionally, if you talk to people who are very religious-minded in subcontinent, would still shun it.
One thing I want to clarify about Ghamidi Sahib is that he is not a modern man. I know him from very close. You can see from his dress. He wears the same dress as he used to wear 40 years ago. He is a scholar, research scholar of Islam, who has made it a point that he would understand Islam the way it is. And for that purpose, he would not spare anyone. Neither the traditional scholars, nor his ustaz, nor the ustaz of his ustaz. Because when it comes to the question of knowing the truth about religion, he would look at the arguments rather than the conclusions. So, and his point of view is that so long as you are not confident about a certain understanding, you don't have arguments to prove your position, follow the traditional way, the way you have been following earlier. But when you reach a certain stage where you find that the arguments from the Quran and Sunnah are taking you to believe that what you had been following earlier was incorrect, it was absolutely imperative that you change yourself and you let the people know about it. So that's how it has happened in the case of many of the views that he has adopted. People can disagree with it, but you cannot disagree about the fact that he has actually changed because arguments have led him to change.
So Ghamidi Sahib obviously has a perspective, all right? And traditionally it's available in predominantly in Urdu, right? So because we are doing a session in English, I would like the audience listening to this one to see why they should find time to listen to what he has to offer, just from another perspective, right? So a lot of time he might be introduced that he might not be a true scholar, he might not be coming from the traditional trainings that a scholar needs to have, or all of that. So how would you summarize for the audience about his background and why they should listen to him? And is it reasoning based, logic based? You just talked about it, right? So convince the audience, if you can, and take an attempt, is probably young generation youth in America. How would you, and why would you ask them to listen to him?
I think if somebody wants to understand Ghamidi Sahib's approach towards religion, he should listen to the response that he gave not very long ago to one of his students, Hassan Ilyas, when he asked him this question. What exactly is it that keeps you inclined to change? Why do you have different views on different occasions? Why are you evolving?
Yeah.
And he said that, look here, I don't claim to be a scholar in the sense that some people would imagine that I am. I am a student of religion. I want to know the truth. And whatever I've learned, I just want to share it with others. If the people don't accept what I'm saying, they're not convinced, I've done my job. That's not a problem. So what I'm saying is that Ghamidi Sahab wants to understand God's religion. And he is equipped with a knowledge of Arabic language, classical Arabic, which helps him in researching, in going deep into Islamic learning, which many other people do not have the opportunity to do. So just to give you an example, I think one of the very first departures from traditional understanding that Ghamidi Sahab went for was in the early 70s, when he was reading Islamic law of inheritance for him to be able to deliver a lecture. Dars-e-Quran. And what he came across while understanding verses 11 and 12 of Surah An-Nisa, the 4th chapter of the Quran, was that if you go by the traditional understanding, the Islamic law of inheritance, the way it is presented, it would not make mathematical sense.
It won't add up.
It won't add up. So he said to himself, what is it that I'm up to? I mean, what am I delivering? I'm not convinced. It's not making sense. Thanks God, he had the knowledge of Arabic language and very good taste for classical Arabic, which led him to believe, after intense, serious research, which obviously was very painful in the sense that he was actually kind of challenging, apparently challenging the word of God. But then he came to the conclusion that the word of God, alhamdulillah, is absolutely correct. What it is saying is what people have not understood. So, in each of these cases wherein you find that Ghamidi Sahab has taken a different position from the majority of the traditional scholars, is not because he is fond of coming up with something new, as many people accuse him of doing. Well, it's simply because his yearning for truth has led him to come to a conclusion different from most of the other scholars are presenting.
And he has taken many years, right? I mean, it's been about 3 to 4 decades where he has spent and given his life to understand, to read, to gain a worldview by reading everything available in a broader perspective from other religions, other schools of thought in Islam, and then broader perspective together. What I like about him is his evolutionary style of learning and the application, scientific methodologies he applies.
Absolutely.
Of reasoning to understand.
But let's clarify, even today, now, mashallah, he's 70 and he's gone through about 40 years of research. He is literally available to change whatever he is presenting if a better, stronger argument is presented to him.
And then when you sit with him on a topic, he is still very well versed across the board. He doesn't have to go and prepare for it, to talk about it in deep sense, and he will very kindly listen to your argument, even if you come from, like myself, non-scholarly background, just to understand the reasoning behind it. He always believes there might be something good that the other person is bringing to the table.
I think, but this is very important that you've said. Ghamidi Sahab is one of those unique people with whom, if you talk, even as a lay person, you would find that he is listening to you very carefully. He's taking you very seriously. And if he feels that what you're saying is making sense, he would not reject it.
I think, and to the audience, if you want to know, I've seen a little bit of it personally as well, that Ghamidi Sahab spends a lot of time to understand the critique as well against, to see maybe there's value and maybe there are things that they have found out that he might need to go back, adjust and understand and, adjust his perspective as well, if the reasoning is strong enough.
Any criticism on Ghamidi Sahab which is based on arguments, if he comes across them, there is no way he would not read it or listen to it and then form a perspective, and I believe genuine, honest perspective on it.
Exactly, and that's what I see. So let's talk a little bit about, because Ghamidi Sahab also came with a very strong religious background, right? So, and you said you spent time with Maulana Islahi as well. And I'm just trying to let the audience know that Ghamidi Sahab has spent a lot of time with traditional thinkers like Maulana Maududi, Maulana Islahi, and many others prominent ones, in the post-partition era in Pakistan. So talk a little bit about the people around him and your experience with Maulana Islahi before we wrap up for today.
I think it would be unfair to talk about Ghamidi Sahab without talking about Maulana Islahi. And my goodness, I mean, I still feel that the period from 1980 to 1990 was the best period of my life, simply because I got the opportunity of listening to Maulana Islahi's lectures on Quran and Hadith during that era. He was outstanding. He was a religious scholar from a traditional religious madrasa, but he was dead honest, and he was very critical when it came to understanding and analyzing the arguments that were presented before him to defend a certain point of view. Let's not forget that the first time when Ghamidi Sahab met Maulana Islahi, he set forth only one condition to Ghamidi Sahab for him to become his student. And he said that my condition is that you will not leave the truth even if your shadow deserts you. You are just all by yourself. I think that's what Maulana Islahi was, and that is exactly what Ghamidi Sahab is.
People who want to know a lot about Ghamidi Sahab need to listen into Maulana Islahi as well, who in many topics Ghamidi Sahab might have now evolved and might not agree with everything Islahi Sahab said. Like Islahi Sahab himself, with his teacher, like Rahi Sahab, he probably evolved that aspect as well. So is that true that the more you put forth research and analysis in your studies of religion, you understand it better, and then you evolve as a person, and evolve in your entire school of thought?
Absolutely. And Ali, I would not hesitate in mentioning that this is exactly what our great scholars of the earlier generations would do.
For example,
Abu Hanifa and his students, Imam Yusuf, Imam Muhammad, they were his students, and they would disagree with their illustrious mentor every now and then. Likewise, Imam Shafi'i was a student of Imam Malik. Imam Shafi'i was also a student of Imam Muhammad, who in turn was a student of Imam Hanifa. This glorious tradition of our past has been revived by these illustrious teachers, mentors of ours. Imam Farahi, Maulana Amin Hasan Islahi, whom Ghamidi Sahab rightly says Imam Islahi, and Ghamidi Sahab himself.
MashaAllah. So audience, this was a great session on Ghamidi Sahab, and Khalid Sahab did a great job to explain us how he sees Ghamidi Sahab as, and hopefully we can do more sessions about Ghamidi Sahab from the people who have been very close with him. So we'll wrap up this session and this episode, and we'll come back with another one with Khalid Sahab very soon. Thank you very much. Thank you, Khalid Sahab.
Welcome.
Assalamu alaikum.